Avengers. West Coast Avengers.
There's only one mantra that you all need to know. That's that one over there. See Todd, bye Todd.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of West Coast Avengers. Happy Sunday, happy day. Whatever you're watching this, thanks for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button and comment after, because I have a feeling there's going to be some saucy comments. Before we get into today's episode, I have a new podcast called Direct Edition. It is available on YouTube and all streaming platforms. You can find all the links down below. Give it a listen. It's a little insight to this crazy mind. And I want to give a special shout out to the stores that I contacted about today's stream. Cape and Cowl, Eitan, and Django and Jeff from the Comics Place Bellingham. I'm speaking to them about all things about owning a comic store in today's kind of current climate in comics. Little Shop of Heroes and Aaron at Now or Never. They were supposed to be here, but they couldn't make it for different reasons. You'll find out during the interview. I think it was Aaron who said he was researching some comics for New Comic Book Day or something. Anyway, I present to you my retailer roundtable. Let's talk comics with comic store owners right here. Let's jump right into it. I've got a couple of great retail comic store owners here. Why doesn't everybody introduce yourself? How about Eitan first?
All right. My name is Eitan Manhoff. I'm from Cape and Cowl Comics in beautiful downtown Oakland, California. We opened in 2015. We were about 1,000 square feet, and we expanded during lockdown times, and we are now like a 2,000 square foot store. A little bit of something for everybody is what we are aiming for.
My name's Jeff. I'm one of two owners of the Comics Place. We've got my business partner here as well. Let him introduce himself and our other side hustle. But yeah, we run the Comics Place in Bellingham. We're the fourth generation of owners of this store that's been open for 43 years. I started there in 2012, just after graduating college, right before I was going to go to grad school for mental health. I was like, let's get just a little part-time comic job. And then the previous owner passed away and left the store to Django and I, and it's been a beautiful, blissful marriage since then.
I'm Django. Jeff hired me, and then suddenly we were owning a comic store together. And during lockdown, we started a project called Comic Shop Assistant, which is a point of sale system for comic stores. And 2.5, 3 years later, now we have 20 people using it and a handful more coming in. So we've been going really deep into comics and the way they move across this industry for the last few years.
Awesome.
We also do a podcast every week called the Perfectly Acceptable Podcast, where we review comic books. So one day in the future, it'd be awesome to get Dave on there because he's got a bunch of great thoughts. I'm excited to get into this.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of you coming through, and I want to give a shout out to Aaron from Now or Never in San Diego. He couldn't make it today because small business owner, he had to take care of his shop because somebody was sick that was supposed to open, and also to Albie Lou and at Little Shop of Heroes in Scotland, who were supposed to be on as well, but once again, small business owner had to deal with some illness and couldn't make it. So jumping into it, how many employees do each of your shops have? And then how often do you have to deal with an emergency like this because it's a small business and kind of pivot and change plans because of that?
Eitan, you feel free to jump in responding to questions first when they're grouped together, because Django and I will just step over each other and stuff. But
that makes my job so much easier. Yeah. I just smile.
Yeah.
Nod. That sounds really, really good. Well, then I'll take this one first. You guys don't mind. I believe I have 7 employees, and 2 of which work remotely, though. So we do run into these issues, but fortunately we tend to schedule 3 people at a time. So if somebody does get sick, then usually the store can remain open. You might have to close for a lunch break or some coffee breaks or whatever, but we don't tend to have an issue where like the store can't open, and it's gotten to a point where it's rare, though it does happen, that I like I have to be the one to run in and open the door. It did happen. I mean, I work Wednesdays, like I work, like everybody else on Wednesdays, but my assistant manager got sick like 2 Wednesdays ago. So there was no like, oh, I'll just get there when I get there, and I might take off early because I feel like it. It was, I was there for 9-10 hours that day.
When I started at the comic shop, it was a 2-person operation on the second floor in like a little art space studio in downtown Bellingham. And after about a year and a half, we moved down to the street and hired a couple more people, and then moved up to our current location probably 7 or so years ago now. Largely credited to Django's vision for being able to move up and outward in the world. But yeah, there are
lunacy.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I love it. Lunacy. But now, including Django and I think there's 11 of us. So from 2 to 11, wow. It's been a pretty large growth trajectory.
And we do end up covering by surprise. The downstairs, the main show floor is 1,800 square feet, and we have about that much extra space as a warehouse upstairs that customers used to be able to come into part of it, but that is no longer the case. We have too much stuff.
Yeah, it's full of collections, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is.
You got to come up and see it sometime, Dave. It's
yeah, you don't want to let me in there, or you do, or you do.
Yeah.
Come on by.
Yeah.
Yeah, you both have very sizable shops in downtowns, and obviously Oakland is a much bigger city than Bellingham. But I picked the 4 stores that I chose was because y'all do a little bit of everything. But dialing it in, how much space, respectively, do you both have allotted for new comic books and new comic book day books?
Sorry, Eitan, please. Yes.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say we actually just changed the layout of our floor in a pretty significant way. For the 40 or so years the store has been open, we generally, and the previous owners, there would be 2 bookshelves that are 7 shelves tall and fit 7 books wide on each shelf. We would have 2 of those full bookcases devoted to the new comics that came out that week. So there was sort of a, the local watering hole of everybody going down and looking at the new comics together. Over the last couple of years, Django and I love to tour different comic shops and see how other people do stuff and pick ideas from them. One thing that we've seen a lot of places was people racking their new comics with, stuff from the last couple of weeks or months, and it's just a long alphabetical listing of things and then tagging things that are new, which we have started implementing as well. So we would have those 2 shelves of new things, and then we'd have everything else that was coming out on, Django would be better at estimating how much retail space that is, but
50 linear feet, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, now we have done the thing where we're incorporating new things into all of the series coming out and tagging it, which is an ideological shift from the way that we've been doing things. So we're racking less space for new comics right now. But there was obviously a lot of thought that went into that and potential room for upselling or finding new things for people who maybe would limit themselves to new books.
And part of that move was to, instead of a new this week, we kind of have new jumping on points on one of those 7x7 shelves, so that people who aren't weekly comic readers can come in and see a bunch of number 1s instead of a bunch of number 1s and 250s. Right. So the idea was like the easiest entry point for people who aren't super steeped in comics. And we haven't decided if we like this at all yet. We're trying to figure out the reports to run to see if it's helped or hurt or is totally neutral. If it's neutral, I think we'd probably go back, is my guess.
We also have about 50 or 60 feet, linear feet of new release wall. We do it kind of like how Jeff was explaining. It is just a long alphabet with some families. So all the Batman stuff is together. So even though Red Hood starts with R, it's going to be there next to Nightwing in the Batman section. Right. And we don't separate out new releases or anything like that. I don't want to give anybody my philosophy on that is I don't want to give anybody a reason to walk by other things that they might like, because they're just like, I'm here, it's new comic book day. So I'm just going straight to the new stuff because you might have missed this other one last week that we all really liked or whatever. So we've got something like over 500 slots at all times full. We do like picks of the week every week where we put like cards behind them to kind of to point out what we all liked. I used to write like paragraphs about books every week, like 10 that I read the night before, and I'm too old for that now.
I used to do the same thing, Eitan. Like, get on there, just take everything in Monday or Tuesday, write a bunch of reviews online Tuesday night, and then it was just like, holy shit, that took a whole day.
That's exhausting.
Yeah.
So by design, what if, let's just say, a new person that is not blind to comics, knows comics, but a person's walking into your store for the first time, and they are walking in there with the mindset of, I'm going to go in there and buy some comics and start reading. How do you design your store to, like, what are the aspects of your store that are welcoming for that? And also, how do you get your employees to also be like aware of everybody walks into the store? Let's, how do you sell them on a new book or whatever, suggest to them? But yeah, what's the design of that?
So, a lot of Django and I's thought process for kind of training our staff and how we've built the store and run the store for the last 10 or 12 years. A lot of that comes back to, I love going to like record stores and comic shops and specialized kind of boutique places. I'm from a really tiny conservative redneck town in Eastern Washington. So I just have that feeling of anytime I go into a store, I don't belong there and everyone is cooler than me and I don't want to ask questions. And, I just, don't want to be outed as an imposter or whatever.
He's working through it, guys.
I'm working through it. I'm 34 now, so I can identify it now. Therapy's been good for me. I basically over-assume that disposition for our customers and make sure our staff, which are all really, pretty empathetic kind of introverts themselves, make it as inviting of a space as possible. So like never verbally approaching somebody from the standpoint that you think something is cool and that other things are not cool. Like everything is somebody's favorite thing. And so wanting to stand by that, having verbal discussions from the point of entry that seem like personal connections. And I've just found that like, if you can start talking to somebody in a friendly manner, the act of selling something or turning them on to new things becomes like a very easy secondary thing, because the most important thing in my shop, our shop, to me is that sense of community. So that's just one of those things. I think everything else kind of falls in line behind that. Django is very, very good at kind of the other practical side of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of what we just described with the number one shelf, and just making sure that we have things displayed in it. Like our newish comics wall doesn't overlap, right? We don't group the one shots along with the main series. So just kind of making everything as plain and accessible at a glance as possible. And then from a sales perspective, like I think enthusiasm about a thing is the keyword for our store. Just like tell somebody about something you like.
Sure.
And
share your passions.
Comics will sell themselves if you're excited about them.
Right. My staff, we talk about this. I mean, I hire to this, so it's not something we have to talk about a lot, but it is something we talk about. But like, it's comics, so everything is cool. Like, good comics are cool, bad comics are cool, weird comics are cool. Like, this is everything that we do and have is cool. And it might not be your favorite thing, but that doesn't matter. And if somebody comes in and they're like really leaning towards something that you don't feel strongly about, like you like, okay, yeah, you could totally read that. But also you might want to check out this, like, and maybe you could get both and compare them, or, that kind of thing. So never discouraging anybody from something that interests them, because you don't know, and it's all cool. And then, our store is like very purposely designed to be as welcoming as possible. And that's not just welcoming to everybody across like the gender spectrum and like, diverse backgrounds, all that stuff. Like that should be automatic these days. Like if your store is not that, you're probably a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Frankly. But being welcoming to people who are brand new to the hobby, or brand new to comics, or just walking in because they're on their lunch break, will also still be welcoming to people who have been neck deep in this for 40 years. But really, like with all of our design choices and layout things, it's like, what if you had no idea? Like, what if you just really, you don't know who Image is or Marvel or Dark Horse or whatever, but you want to read a horror story. Well, that's why we do genre, because then you can just go to horror, and it doesn't matter who published it, doesn't matter who wrote it, I mean, the staff's there to kind of help guide you in that, but not everybody wants to interact with the staff. Like you have to accept that not everybody wants to talk to you. And actually quite a few people who come in the comic book store don't want to talk to you.
Yes. So a big part for us
We're introverts by nature.
Yeah.
Right.
Anticipate the questions that could come up, but people would have to ask, and then provide the answer without making people need to ask it. Sure. Because that introverted nature, like if you are requiring people to ask you something, you're missing out on a chunk of people who are not going to ask just by the nature of their personality. And Eitan, just you talking it, I think an interesting, time for comic shops right now. Like I was born in 1989. So we are of this generation, I am, and you guys are, of like, we have television shows like The Simpsons with comic book guy in it. So right now we're at a time where the problems with specialized interests like comics have had the problems represented and shown to us. So now we can act in contrast to that, which I think is a really important and powerful thing. We are living basically in contrast to the comic shops of the 80s and 90s, which were phenomenal and incredible, but we're learning from those shortcomings.
And to that point, and to what Eitan said, if comic book stores, and I'm born in '79, so I'm a bit older. If comic shops were more inclusive when I was a kid, I might have actually talked to a girl in a comic shop once.
Yeah,
but it never happened. It never fucking happened.
Right.
I didn't talk to a lot of people because they were the same as me, and it's like, okay, cool. I have my own friends. I don't need the same people. I want to meet different people. I want to experience different things, and comics does provide that. We can look at different books as from different creators and experience a little bit of what they offer if they're culturally different or any type of difference. And that's the beautiful thing, across the board about it. And so I want to flip the last question I asked you. So for somebody like me, okay, I read new comics and I know what I'm going to find, and I'm always happy to listen to suggestions. But when I walk into a comic store as Dave, I'm going to look at back issues. I'm going to start digging through bins. I'm going to start looking at wall books. I'm going to start looking for stuff that is off the cuff, maybe artist editions or old magazines, comics journals, stuff like that. What do you, both of your stores respectively, do for that, for welcoming somebody like me that wants to look at the older stuff because I dig, I'm looking for treasure.
We've got 2 walls of wall books that we try and keep stocked. There's like the more slightly, like $100 or less, and then there's the big books on the other side. We have at any time around 100 long boxes of back issues you can dig through, and we even built like custom drawers, so you're not like dragging them off a shelf and putting them on the ground.
Yeah.
Just recently I put a display back there of like some classic reprints and some undergrounds and some books about comics, just all kind of there that I think might appeal to folks who aren't necessarily coming in for the new issue of Batman, but are probably interested in the history of Batman, or maybe are coming like, you got any Golden Age? And no, but I got some really nice reprints of some Golden Age, and they're right here by the back issues. So yeah, definitely, very like collector friendly. Like there's no wrong way to do comics. So we are there to help you find the cool stuff that you want to add your collection, show off or not, or whatever.
Yeah. It's a balance.
And this is my favorite part of comics, I think, is digging through back issues. So Jeff is more of a new issue guy than I am, and I'm more of a back issue guy than he is. So we do really well, like kind of seaming together there for the store. So we have just before lockdown, we paid a lot of money to have some custom drawers built, and wrote the check, and then locked down like 2 weeks later. But then we were able to use those drawers for weeks and weeks and weeks. So we have like an easy way to get into back issue drawers. We also have an organization, like a flow of incoming back issues, so that each week we have a row of books that are new that week, and we just shuffle those down when the new week happens. So we've got about a long box every week goes out. And then once those fill up, they get moved over to the main back issue stock. Anything that's more than maybe $20-ish will go behind the counter. And we've got limited display case space. So we have like 2 display cases and a little bit of wall space. And then a dozen short boxes of keys and nicer books. So, some of that's on demand. It's not really ideal. It'd be nice to be able to show those off, but that's, who's got space to show off hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books?
We have criminally low ceilings. So I would love to get some wall books, because like truly, when I visit other stores, that's the thing that makes me want to buy comics more than anything, are like all the wall books, because they remind me of comic shops from my childhood, and it's a bunch of nostalgia tied covers and stuff. That's definitely what I pursue when I'm a customer in shops. But yeah, Django and I have been my kingdom for higher ceilings for 7 years now or something.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do specifically for people like you, Dave, is we have about 10,000 books inventoried and priced that are not on the floor, that are like upstairs in our warehouse. And so we have QR codes that people can scan or go to the website to see those and ask us to go retrieve them for them. We also have about 13,000 books that haven't been priced yet, but that have been cataloged. So people can see the stuff that we're working on and ask us to shuffle those to the top.
All right, that's great.
And then whoever's the most excited about back issues, if we see somebody in the back, the employee that cares the most about back issues will usually go back there and approach them. And, if you don't see what you're looking for, let us go look through one of the 100,000 weird boxes upstairs and bring something down.
I think that first time I was in your store, you were the one who approached me, and we talked for a bit.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Dang, you've been up there, and I just didn't even hold it in my brain.
It was a while ago. I don't get up there that often, just because it's.
Well, thanks for trekking up, dude. Yeah.
It's crazy. I think I've been to Cape and Cowl more because I fly to the Bay Area usually like 2-3 times a year. But in that juxtaposition of new and back issues, and we'll talk about ancillary items and all that stuff, but what percentage are you doing in back issues? Let's just say since the pandemic, since lockdown and all that stuff ended, and then percentage of sales in new comic books, because they both fascinate me. And, I've heard a lot of different things from different stores, but, I'd love to hear both of you speak on both of your shops speak on that.
Eitan, if you can start
over like total sales, like
generally, or
I mean, we're pretty steady at like 40% of our annual sales are new comics, and vintage comics are closer to like 15%. Okay. But that doesn't include, that's just in store. We do quite a bit on Instagram sales. Right. And so that probably ticks that number up a little bit, but I'm just not going to do that math, but it's less, and back issues, vintage back issues, there was a crazy spike and boom during the first half of the pandemic. And that we didn't get to take full advantage of because we were curbside only for so long. But Instagram helped with that. But it's on a decline from there for sure. I think it hit a little valley there, and it's starting to come back up again as people start to feel more comfortable buying books, I guess. So that's about it for us.
Okay.
At our store, I would say like the 3 main categories would be new issues, graphic novels, and then back issues and key issues. I do all the ordering for all of our new issues, so I stay more in touch with that. But yeah, I mean, it's tough because, you know, you make the nut of your shop's finances through those monthly subscription books. I'm always torn because I think the best shops have the most selection, the most opportunity to find comics that you would never see, but margins on comics are fixed, right? So every comic that you order for your shelf that you don't sell has taken the money that you made from a comic that you did sell. So right now, that balance is something that Django and I have been working on and trying to find. So we've actually been dialing back some of the issues a little bit, because obviously the margins on back issues and key issues are drastically better. But with our cool little comic shop assistant that we built, we could get those reports
I brought it up
pretty easally. Yeah, Django, what do you got for our percentage breakdowns?
So, Jeff, you're close. Games and back issues usually flop around.
Right? Games.
Right?
Forget we do that.
So we've got books, which would be any graphic novels or hardcovers, at 36.5%. Comics at 23.5%. Games at 13%. And back issues at 7.5%. So in the realm of comics, back issues are about a quarter of our floppy sales, if that makes sense.
Wow. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. From the standpoint, if I step outside of myself, from the standpoint of somebody that's just a comics reader and they hear about like a classic run, or they hear about Watchmen and they want to collect both ways. They want to read the hardcover, but they want to buy the back issues. I mean, that I think, and you guys can correct me, but I feel like if people are buying back issues, they're going to explore comics further in every way possible, because it's, and I talk about this a lot on all of my interviews and podcasts. It's like music, right? You listen to a band and then you find out that they were influenced by so-and-so. And so you go back and you listen to that, and then you're exploring other music because you're exploring influences. So I would like to think it works like that, but you know, I do what I do and I know my customer base. So I don't know your both respective customer bases.
I think it's very symbiotic and goes both directions. Like you were just saying, I think if you're reading back issues, you're going to want to be informed with what's happening now, what happened to these stories, the follow up of them. But I absolutely agree. That's how I approach music myself. Like, what do I like? Okay, who influenced those people? So you work backwards from modern issues as well. And I think a lot of a store's ability to be free with the back issues and buying collections and advertising them, again, is a symbiotic relationship with how secure their subscriber base is, right? Like if you have a fixed amount of income that's pretty secure because you have X number of subscribers as a guaranteed amount, you're able to explore other avenues. Back issues were a thing we weren't doing until a year or two before the pandemic. Just the previous owners of the store hadn't made it a priority. There wasn't a ton of flexible cash to be buying collections. But we just made it a point to, anytime someone brings in a collection, make an offer for it so that more people know that we buy collections. And, you know, now we're able to be very exploratory with that stuff. But yeah, Django, that's sort of Django's baby is the collection acquisition.
Yeah, I love watching people kind of spider out through back issues. We only kind of related. We just bought a huge collection of books from a guy, and as I was going through his collection, I could see that he got into Man-Thing and Swamp Thing early on. He had like number ones of both. And then he had a huge run of Howard the Duck, who first appeared in Man-Thing. Right. And then he had a bunch of Kiss appearances, who first appeared in Howard the Duck. So you could kind of watch him.
You get to know people
50 years ago. Expand his comic book vocabulary.
It is amazing.
Super cool.
It's amazing how well you get to know people through buying their collections. It happens to me all the time, where you can predict what you're going to see in the, and then, you got screwed if you got a Hulk run, and then all of a sudden you get to 180 and 181 and they're not there.
Yep.
You could tell when they got their second job and could afford to get multiple copies of a thing,
Yeah.
I think in our shop, I like anecdotally see it go the other way a bit more. Where new readers they always want to know like how we got there, or they always want to know, like if they're an MCU fan, they want like the source material for that, so I think I think we see it more people reading the new stuff who then want the history. Whereas in our shop, more those like guys digging in the boxes, like they kind of stay in that lane. They'll be like, "This is what Batman did." I keep using Batman as an example. This is what the
Why not?
X-Men did.
Great costume. Great
He's got a
costume.
cape
I'm
and
just
a
like
cowl.
really big Batman fan, guys. It's always up here.
Yeah.
But those guys are, I think, a little less likely to cross that bridge than the other way around.
Mhm.
And actually, I think a lot of those new readers too are maybe even more inclined to be handed a collection or a graphic novel. Or just like put Secret Wars in their hands instead of, I'm like, here for $35, you can read this whole thing, as opposed to going in the boxes. And we actually only have 8 of the issues and they're all $12. So, and then you have to go track down the other one. So I think it works that way a little bit more in our shop.
Okay. So, and this is one of the last things on the back issues that I wanted to get out, but I imagine I'm not the only person that kind of noticed this, but over the pandemic, I got into doing the claim sales, and Eitan, you did too. I don't know if you guys did, but
We talked about it a lot.
Talked about it a lot.
yeah.
So easy.
So
You guys should do it.
the rise, right? So the rise of people on the internet getting into vintage comics kind of coincides with the claim sale era, which I'm still part of. But I wonder, and I'm starting to think that Marvel and DC, the big two, were looking at those, because facsimiles over the last 3 years have come out on a non-stop basis, to the point of nobody asked for the first John Stewart reprint, but they put it out there.
Here it is.
So do you see that as kind of like a symbiotic thing? And also, have you seen any people coming in and buying the facsimiles and then eventually being like, "Oh, do you guys have an actual copy of the original book?" Like, has it led to any more back issue sales along with that? Maybe getting the issues that surround it or whatever?
I haven't seen that.
That's a good question.
I've seen a lot of people buying them kind of as placeholders until they can afford the real deal,
Right.
which I think is amazing. Like if somebody can buy a cheap version of a comic and tick that box, then they can kind of finish something in their brain, and maybe actually I'll someday own all of the Batman issues because they've reprinted 1 through 100 that I could never actually afford. I think the facsimile thing, like going back to Watchmen, like you mentioned a few minutes ago, I think that there's a real push for nostalgia right now.
Sure.
And I think that the publishers tapped into that. And it didn't really resonate with me until early this year. Like in January, we launched a whole bunch of initiatives in our store to try to, goose sales and keep things moving through January. And when I was describing them to people, I realized that like 2 or 3 of these things that we were doing were heavily focused on nostalgia for people. Right.
Yeah.
So we have like a spinner rack that is all comics that came out in this month, 1991. Right. So we just go through our back issues and fill it up. Their cover price, nobody wants most of those. Most of them are cover price. We'll sometimes put a $10 one in there. And like a new focus on back issues and then also having a spinner rack that's all facsimiles. Right. So all of that is kind of tapping into nostalgia. And I think it's just kind of the thing that's happening with pop culture right now, is people wishing that they had what they used to have when they were younger.
To your question, it's a really interesting, almost like scalpeling of you're looking at a microcosm of a microcosm with these facsimile editions, because you're looking at people who are looking to get something based on nostalgia. But we're looking at things now like Batman Year One or Secret Wars is getting reprinted in facsimile editions. And what is the difference between somebody who wants to collect all of those issues in facsimile and somebody who would want to just get the paperback to read it? So like it is, are you doing it for the story? There's an appeal to the facsimile editions because you get the advertisements, but it's going to be interesting in my mind to watch the next year or so and see how those two populations separate themselves from one another. Like, what is the purpose of having Secret Wars reprinted in facsimile editions and trade paperbacks, and do people jump from one to the other? Because there's a different modality of thought that goes into acquiring both of those, and I think it's really interesting. And I think good on the comics industry for tapping into the facsimile edition so quickly. They're like, keep ordering these, we're going to keep making them, which is awesome. But yeah, the why of those two populations hasn't become incredibly clear to me yet, which is going to be fun to watch.
Before you answer, Eitan, do you think it is a direct response to the new comic book industry, and I'm, the big two, whatever, seeing how much money is coming into the secondary market because people are, like I am tapped into that. That's what I do, but I do it specifically because not everybody has a comic book store that carries this stuff within driving distance. I have people that buy stuff that are in the boonies all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I haven't thought about that for the facsimiles. I think that the publishers, particularly during lockdown peak Instagram time, really took notice of how well first appearances were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you read James Tynion's Batman, back to Batman, he was introducing a new character like every other issue.
Yeah.
And that
sometimes too.
Sometimes too, yeah. And that was either him being like, I like this buzz, or I really want to add something, or there was some kind of editorial note like, hey, we're pushing numbers every time we say there's going to be a new character. And the secondary market's buzzing and they're changing hands on eBay, all this stuff. The facsimiles being tied to that is interesting. I think at first the facsimiles were coming out in connection to other things that made sense, like a movie.
Mm-hmm.
You might get the first appearance of the Guardians of the Galaxy or something because there's a new Guardians movie. Or you might get, like, we're about to get the first appearance of Dazzler because there's Dazzler rumors, and
right.
so people like that. Or it's tied to like a new story, which I think is really cool. Like the Riddler is the main focus of this Batman story for the next 2 months or 3 months. Let's do the first appearance of Riddler. I think that's really cool because then you're like connecting the comics folks to more comics. But I do think it's gotten away from him a little bit because, I love Jon Stewart and I love that we just got a reprint of First Appearance of Jon Stewart, but there was no reason for that. Maybe Black History
Month. That one was specifically based on Jon Stewart's return to the Daily Show. So that reprint.
They just forgot which Jon Stewart was where.
Synergy.
Eitan, Dave, I like tying in the idea of those online sales, kind of the pandemic influencing some of this facsimile edition increase. I think it's also like during the pandemic, there was people stuck at home with flexible income and people who wouldn't normally have flexible income, a lot of like 20 somethings because they were people working part-time jobs who then got unemployment. So you not only saw comic book sales go up, but like Pokemon singles, video games, action figures from my childhood. And so I think it's a combination of what you're saying and also what Django was saying of like the nostalgia thing. I think that we were finding a population with more money than normal and nostalgia being the thing that they were seeking out. And I think facsimile editions are wonderful for that because as much as we all talked about hating advertisements and stuff when we're kids, now I'm like, oh, it's that dinosaur gummy rock candy. I never had that, but I want to look
glow in the dark model.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the Hostess ads.
Yeah.
With all the thousands of original Hostess ads, which were actual comic strips.
Right.
Yeah. I think the publishers, like, not to speak for them, but I think that they did a thing that worked and then they followed the money. Like, I don't think they were like, oh, nostalgia is a big deal. And in the next 2 years, we're going to see a resurgence in people being interested in their childhood. I think they were just like, oh, let's print this thing to tie into a movie or a comic or whatever. And they're like, holy cow, this sold really well. Let's keep it rolling. That, like, if I had to make a grand conspiracy theory about why we have so many facsimiles, it's as simple as they sold pretty well when they tried it.
Right. Specifically, I want to ask Eitan, so you won the Spirit Award last year, for the Will Eisner Retailer Spirit Award, and you were up
Congrats,
against.
Eitan. That is an awesome honor, man.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no,
Thank you. It's pretty
that's
sweet.
awesome, and your shop is fantastic. It creates a community. I mean, I look. Miles Ritchie, who now runs, he's doing your social media, but him and Matt did art for the store, and it's just got that community feel. Did the winning of that award, did you see did it help the store? Did it raise the profile of the store as it should have?
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
In terms of like sales, people
Yeah.
definitely just came in. Like people came in
Mhm.
after that, and they just kind of wanted to, I think, share in the good vibes of that win, and congratulate us and high five us, and then show some support and grab something. So that was definitely an immediate impact, and yeah, I would say it's still a little surprising to me. Maybe I meet a creator or something at an event, like we were just at Comics Pro a few weeks ago, and they know the shop.
Yeah.
And it's still, to me, I feel like the new kid who's just been doing this for a while. They're like, I'm not. Not a
It never
kid,
goes
and
away.
I guess I'm not that
Yeah,
new. But I still definitely feel that. So yeah, I think the profile has been raised a bit, and I think there was some immediate impact right after the win.
That's awesome. And congratulations once again. And for Comics Place in Bellingham. Now I know you said fourth generation, but that's the store where Eric Larson meets his two friends that brings about graphic fantasy and literally is the birthplace,
we
in
have
a way of Savage Dragon.
Yeah.
in the shop. We have a printed pull list of Eric's that has his hand drawn early sketch of the dragon on it. From pre graphic fantasy, and then you get graphic fantasies a couple times a year come through the
Yeah.
store and stuff, and it's hard to sell those because no one. It's small enough that the world doesn't quite know, but you get things like
Mhm.
Cartoonist Kayfabe out there raising that awareness, which is great.
Yeah, and I bought a copy, showed up in a store in my area, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm never getting rid of this until I find another one.
Vanishingly rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to jump into new comic talk, but both of your shops, I don't know for sure. But do you both seek out independent creator owned self-published stuff to carry in the store, local artists, or even people that may be regionally locally? Is that something that both of your stores kind of look to do in the light of something like graphic fantasy becoming a legendary thing at this point? There's plenty of that will eventually happen 10, 20, 30 years from now.
It's really important in our store, and a lot of that goes back to also just being a community hub, being a
Mhm.
place for people. So fostering creatives of all types. I ordered some books of poetry from somebody I knew from my childhood recently, but like any local creators, artists, like it's hard to get support as a young or inexperienced creator in any type of field. I think it's really important to foster support for that. So that's, in terms of local stuff, we do a lot of that in our store. And I'm really proud of that. And then in terms of ordering new comics, yeah, that's hugely important to me. In using data to try and understand where we're losing money and making money, we have dialed back the very small publisher books a little bit,
Mhm.
just by virtue of shelf space and,
Cash
frankly, cash flow. Like, I
Yeah.
love ideologically stocking these things so people can come in and see stuff they've never seen before. But if you are just spending a ton of money doing that, you look at things like publisher level or creator familiarity, or for sure.
Yeah, very similar for us. I mean, the local stuff is hugely important, just as a way to show our support for our community and the artists working there. We give some pretty prime real estate to it. It's right in front. You walk in the store. There's a little like landing pad so you can get your bearings, and then right there is like this overflowing thing of local created comics. So we'll take anything. As
Sure.
long as it's not, offensive or evil. we'll take it and we'll put it out there and we'll put whatever price tag you want on it, and we'll try and connect it to people. And yeah, the ordering, I used to just order like every new artist, new creator, and like, we'll give it a shot. Sure. What's 5 copies? We'll put it out there. Maybe we'll find somebody, and maybe, maybe we're helping somebody get going. It is a lot harder to do that now. It's just, there's so much stuff. And a lot of it doesn't sell, and it has nothing to do with the quality. But also a lot of that stuff needs to be hand sold because people aren't familiar with it. And if the staff, if we have to read X-Men because we have 1 billion copies coming in and we need to be able to sell X-Men, then that's what we have to read to hand sell. And the priority to hand sell the 4 copies of this new book really slides down, and then they just don't sell. And then you're just looking at, those have a $5 cover price. That's, $20 that we are not getting back, that are going into a long box in the back room for the rest of time.
Yeah. And that I know every store really does have to deal with a back stock of unsold new comic book day stuff that eventually becomes the sidewalk sale for 25 cents. But, it's one of those things too, where we look back at history and books that weren't ordered a bunch, that may have had low print runs to begin with, end up becoming these massive successes. And I look at Walking Dead, I look at Invincible. I mean, Kirkman's the through line through that. But what, 12,000 copies?
You also have to look at adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters
That
and
too.
fish police
The
and, like Revenger. Like it would be awesome if we had the foresight to know which one was going to be a Ninja Turtles and which one was going to be. I can't even think of one, but there's 1,000 comics that you can't even give away for every one Ninja Turtles or Walking Dead.
And even when you do order the 5 copies or the 10 copies of the one that becomes that big thing, either the price spikes immediately and you either sell it at cover price or you follow the market and increase that price sale. But you're like, to Eitan's point of like, we'll take a gamble, I'll order 5 of that, because it's a small press thing. So then what was necessarily the net gain of having 5 copies of a thing that increased in the secondary market price? Like, is that gamble worth it in my store if I'm just selling 5 at cover price for something, again, the theoretical value to me is being able to be a store where people can come in and be exposed to that stuff and acquire it. But when there are so many small press books, one series will hit, but like 25 don't. So if you are taking a 5-issue risk for each one. Right.
And plus, like Walking Dead as an example, that's a 1 in 1,000, a 1 in 10,000. Sure. So if I spend $20 on 5 issues 999 times and haven't sold, and then that one hits, maybe I even stash it and keep it until it's $1,000 book.
You can find it.
Find it. I'm still out thousands of dollars. Like I didn't win. I think as store owners, we really have to fight the urge to speculate.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. It's not safe. It's not smart. We should, my feeling is we should be selling these books at cover price. We should be selling the ones we think we can sell, and stick to what we know with safe experimentation.
Sure.
Eitan, that's an awesome point. And I said on some podcast kind of recently that I think store owners oftentimes and stores by a defensive move feel a combative relationship with speculators. We want to limit the numbers that they can buy, and we feel like we're being taken advantage of when they try to buy multiple copies of a thing that's not at market price or whatever. I feel that genuinely, I get that, but I also feel like speculators are an important part of this ecosystem that is comics. And we can hate the people for making money in a way that we can't, but it's a thing where that subculture of this larger culture helps every aspect of it. So that push and pull is really difficult. And on topic of online sales, the beginning of the pandemic was when we started putting our inventory online. by necessity to be able to stay afloat. And we are a store that like really tries to cater towards in-store community and culture and providing a relationship with those people. And it was an interesting year for us and our staff of needing to not resent sending comics at cover price to a state on the other side of the country, which shouldn't be a thing that you would resent, right? But
we sure did.
But we did, or like our employees would, because they're like, oh, I'm doing all this work for this person I never know because they know it's $4 cheaper here. But like, that's an important part of comics, you know, like don't yuck somebody else's yum. Like let people collect the way they want to.
Don't yuck most people's yum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I use that terminology all the time. The ecosystem and speculators are part of it, and it's totally fine. The only time I get a little frustrated by it is when it becomes impediment to my reader's ability to read a story. And that's where our limit of like one of an issue or one of a cover comes from. Cause I don't want the readers to lose out on missing on an issue because somebody wanted to go sell a $4 book for $10 on eBay. Like if that's how you get your kicks and that's how you do comics, that's awesome. But when it's, you know, issue 37 of a series that somebody else has read the first 36 of, and have bought them off the stands because that's their style, that becomes like, oh, I wish you could have that happen. But then also, Jeff, what you're saying about like the online sales and stuff, same for us, you know, right? March, like a week after lockdown, we switched to Comic Hub, one of the other POS systems, and it moved our stuff online overnight. And all of a sudden, we're shipping stuff all over the country and canceling orders because we didn't keep good inventory and just like pulling our hair out doing this stuff. But beyond that, you know, particularly with the Instagram stuff we were doing, it was how we stayed in touch with our community, because we were also very much an in-store focused, and we still are like an in-store focused community-based store. But when people couldn't come into the store or weren't comfortable coming into the store or whatever it was, like, this is how we're gonna stay connected. And it was a few, you know, like we did book clubs and things where just me and the staff would read a book and talk about it, and people could be in the comments and talk to us. And then, but it was also the claim sales, because that was like a little entertainment, and it was a way to talk about books, and but people to just stay in touch with us for a couple hours a week when we couldn't be together in the store. So, and it's part of, and I think it's still acts that way, even though we've been open for a while now. We still have claim sales, and we still have people who only really deal with us that way, and they really just kind of like to be there in the comments and be like, oh, I love that one, or like, that price sucks.
You kind of have to go to where people are, right? Like every single person who likes comics likes them in a different way and for a different reason. And you know, if you can open that channel for them to find you and engage with you, then you win. Some people want to only manage their subscriptions online, and some people will never even log in, and they want to make a phone call and talk to you for 15 minutes to cancel one series, right? So you like everything you do has to kind of be, is this worth the number of people who want to engage in this way? And, you know, I don't think that we've really opened a channel with comics that we didn't find a meaningful number of people who wanted to hang out with us through that method.
It's just that human tendency for binary thinking that is antiquated, you know, like in-store and out-store. They can exist together in your store.
Sure. Yeah. And it gives people an opportunity to engage with a store that maybe they live 600 miles from. Exactly. You know, and for me, it's the same thing, Eitan. Like, I do my live show, I sell books, but I am talking to people I can't see for 5 hours at a time, engaging with a chat, and people are they don't even have to buy a book. They can just hang out and ask me questions. You know, so this thing that was always so disconnected, you know, you go to your shop wherever you grew up, even if there was a shop 25 miles away, you may not have ever interacted with anybody that goes to both shops, but now we have this way to interact. You guys have a podcast. You guys do the IG claim sales. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I wanted to dial it back a bit. There was a question I wanted to ask when talking about new comics. right now I'm reading more non-traditional format comics than I am traditional, and that being Distillery. I'm buying everything they put out because I think it's the best comics right now. I've dived into some of the Black Label DC stuff, but this past week we had The Last Mermaid come out by Derek Kirk Kim and Image Comics.
New
And
shape.
I met Derek at Emerald City Comic Con. We chatted for a bit, and I read the comic. I enjoyed it. It hooked me immediately. Like and he said it's going to be 30 to 40 issues as long as it
Hell
does well.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So respectively with new comics, is format the oddball format between those things I just mentioned? Is that a like, do people shy away from it, or are you seeing more people be like, this stands out because it's different, I'm going to pick it up and check it out?
I think Distillery has actually gone a long way to breaking down the barrier that the larger format has had for a number of years, since it's been used quite a bit. Like people are really responding to those books, and I'm not hearing anything about, I wish they weren't this size. I'm hearing more like, I guess I need a magazine box.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it might be just who is reading those books. Like it might be the DC guys who were not, super inclined to get the Black Label. They're just like, that doesn't fit in my boxes. It's too big. I can't hold it. What am I going to do?
Batman's supposed to be this size.
Yeah, it's not a comic book. What? And so it could just be the different audience. But I also think we've sold quite a bit of Distillery to that audience, and I think I think they could get some credit for making it a little more acceptable.
I think a lot of it kind of comes down to store displays. Like, okay, so this is like deep retail nerd. I came up in music stores, right? Like some of my first retail jobs were in music stores, and at some point when records started going away and CDs started getting popular, they made CD cases the size that they were and the security boxes because it was half of a record width.
Yeah.
So you could repurpose the same display case to show CDs and keep them hard to smuggle out under your shirt, right? And that's why you had those tall CD cases with the CD on top. And I think that like record stores got lucky in that they could just do a real simple conversion to sell this new shaped item. And comic stores have, 40, maybe up to 50 or 60 years of legacy with these shelves. And it is once you've got books which weigh about the same as dark matter on a shelf, it's hard to pull them all off, rethink your whole store to support a magazine size thing. And I think, like, along with that, we've seen the number of titles increase so much that if a store can't flex their space for new comics, they might have to start overlapping books or not ordering books. So I think that with things like Black Label and The Last Mermaid and
The Last Ronin.
They've experimented. Last Ronin, God,
Yeah,
Last
that
Ronin
too.
threw us all for a loop. Like, how do you ship a thing that's the wrong shape?
It's like UK size.
Yeah, like we didn't invent it. Somebody said, hey, if you cut down a magazine board, it fits in a Golden Age bag, and that fits a Last Ronin comic pretty well. But like,
even hand making a
that,
lot of bags and boards.
Yeah, a lot of cutting. All of that to say, like, I think that I think stores have the ability to make those Black Label books popular. And I think that it's like some stores are willing to rearrange things and make that move. And some stores kind of start from a defensive point about having to do that. And that probably has something to do with the response to that size and shape in their store. I love your comment about magazine size boxes, Eitan, because, I just realized we don't have magazine size boxes on the floor, and we should just have them assembled and ready to pick up next to the Black Label shelf. Like,
Throw some Distillery logos on it. Yeah.
There you go. I'm staring at 3 magazine boxes right now. I think Distillery is definitely tapping into, and Somna is really the one that has grabbed me, and I'm actually going to be having Becky and hopefully Tula on the channel later this week.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, it is for the person that likes A24 movies, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
style of movie. Soma is that waiting to happen, and Gone,
Yeah.
I think, is too. So I like seeing how successful it's become, because let's just be honest. I mean, comics aren't made for kids anymore generally, but those comics specifically are made for adults.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
And I think that, you know, a debt of credit goes to DC for championing Black Label sizes
Mhm.
for a period of time before Distillery, because I think if they were the first ones to be doing it, we would have been, you know, have a more tenuous relationship with it. Like, we've now figured out how we want to be racking magazine bags and boards or items. In terms of ordering and acquisition in the shop, I'm not sure that people for sure gravitate to them based on the dimensions in our store, but I don't think it is as much of a disservice as originally I thought it was. Like the DC stuff, it seemed like there were conversations like, what am I going to do with this? What I'm going to do? And so, but now people have know what they're doing. They have the boxes. They understand, okay, I like actually putting these ones directly spine out on my shelf and stuff. So I think that, you know, obviously everything stands on the shoulders of the giants before it. And I think Distillery is in a really wonderful spot to be able to take advantage of these dimensions based on what's come before it. Last Mermaid's a really interesting one because, you know, it's like mouse guard shaped or something, you know, like, which if I'm absolutely honest, I would prefer it to be the Distillery size, just because the height makes it a little bit harder to be seen in our store. But yeah, Eitan or Dave, like, do you order things? Does that dimension size affect your gut instinct on an order?
Not a lot. You know,
Yeah,
I just I'm trying to think. You know, what was it? The Batman, the first night that came out last week. I ordered that like it was a Batman mini series. I didn't take my numbers down because it was the larger size. I think. Yeah, I really think that resistance has been broken down. Like, if you want to read good stuff, you're gonna have to read it how it's given to you. I can't make it any smaller. They're gonna keep publishing it this way. You know, you're probably not gonna get a. They're not gonna do a smaller paperback. We've seen that the paperback comes large too. Like you got to trust me that this story rules, and it's worth, you know. It's worth feeling a little funny when doing it. So
Eitan, what are they going to do with those new digest-sized reprints of Black Label books? Will they be like the digest is just like a?
I think that's the end. That's it.
For my part, when I walk into a store and I see, like, for example, the Marvel treasuries that are coming back, thanks to Pisker's
awesome.
Tom Scioli and Jim Rugg with the grand design. I immediately want to buy it. Like, I didn't know that Darth Vader Black, White, and Red existed in the treasury, and I saw it. I'm like, I'm buying this because, oh my God, not only getting an oversized Peach, I'm getting oversized DWJ. And you know, those two names, to see it in the, you know, almost the size that the art was created. Yeah, give me more of that.
It's a comic and an art book.
And they look so good on your shelf that you're like, well, I don't want it to be alone. So now I need to go buy any of them, like the Vader Black, White, and Blue. Like, I wasn't going to get that, but I don't want my book to be lonely. And those look good. Like those, I'm in love with that new binding you just mentioned.
Yeah, playing around with the formats for you know, for people that are actually interested in opening up their comics, give me more of that. You know, I do collect, but I am a reader before everything, and I sell what I sell based on the fact that this artist is on it or this is the story. I mean, sure, key issues are great to sell, but you know, if I can sell R. Crumb stuff just based on the fact that it's R. Crumb, they sell themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So jumping into something else. I mean, the internet's full of a lot of people.
Sure is.
A lot of people with some fucking weird ass opinions about, you know, art. And I'm not going to go down that road, but there seems to be a lot of pushback in certain circles of people saying that these artists or these writers should be doing these things a certain way for new comics. Do you see that actually physically manifest in your store where somebody's like, I don't like this book because this person put too much of their personality into it? Or is it just a bunch of cowards on the internet saying that?
We haven't really seen a ton of that. And when we do, the conversation is always, well, then don't read it. Like there's 100 other comics that came out this week that you could read. Like, I don't read My Little Pony, but
Yeah.
I'm happy that My Little Pony exists because that kid likes it and that adult likes
Sure.
it and that guy likes it. Like, you know, whatever. Just don't read it. We kind of slap people real quick when that stuff starts coming up, so they get on the internet and talk to you instead, I think.
Yeah, you receive what you're willing to tolerate, right?
Sure.
And I think people who have that negative or critical viewpoint of things, I think our store, top to bottom, staff wise, just doesn't respond to it. Not, you know, we're trying to be as welcoming to those negative people, but they know that conversation's not going to go anywhere in our store. We've had, you know, occasionally it happens, but it's usually people who are not regulars. And if they are regulars, they're probably the people who stopped shopping at our store when we required masks at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't think we run into it. I can't, I'm like racking my brain trying to think of an example. Yeah, I think people who come into our shop probably know that's just not, you know, they're going to be surrounded by silence as soon as they drop something like that, and it's going to be awkward for them, and we're all going to go about loving all of our comics, you know, and probably that one that you're shitting on it sounds like it'd probably be my favorite. So
Top of the pile.
Well,
And
reputation, you know, blocks that.
That's the thing also. It's like, I may not like something. I know I'm not a big fan of Jeff Johns' writing. I've tried so many times. Do I bash Jeff Johns? No, I just don't read it. You know, like, it's a very simple formula. Like you said, if you don't like it, don't read it. Don't harsh
Support the
somebody
things
else's.
you like.
Yeah, don't step on somebody else's joy just because you don't like it. Like, people that create comics from top to bottom, no matter where their interests are, they're still trying to create something that they hope other people will enjoy. And that's really not something, you know, for me or for anybody that should be just shitting all over. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me.
You
know,
mentioned in an older episode of your podcast a similar idea, but you were relating it to music, right? And so I think both of us, when we were younger, probably all of us, you know, like you grow through this feeling of, you get an identity through disliking things, or, you know, it's cool to have hot takes and hot opinions and to be able to shit on things and love certain things. And then in my early 20s, and I credit comics with it very much, and getting into a local music scene of just like, I had to shift my ideas to be like, there's nothing cooler than vulnerably liking something and being willing to like it. You have a big love for like Todd McFarlane. I was born in '89. So like in my 20s, a lot of popular culture was like shitting on 90s comic art, you know? And I love the kayfabe guys for kind of championing the awesomeness of it. You can love that art and still think the anatomy can be whack, but like, I've got Todd McFarlane vault editions and artist editions and stuff over here because like, it's so cool to me. Like, I was 5. It's so cool. But like, you know, that switch. And I think there is a larger cultural shift of that going on as well. Like, open-mindedness and vulnerability is becoming more and more cool. And I think that with comics, that's really, really important.
No, and I 100% agree. And I am a Todd huge fan. See Todd by
Me
Todd.
too.
That's my motto.
Yeah.
And, you know, having him on the channel was this huge, you know, moment for me and an honor. And, you know, he's the reason why I love comics. And speaking of superstar artists and new comics these days, you know, you hear, I mean, all of us, and the old guard, the new guard, everybody that's loved comics for more than 10 minutes has always heard comics are dying. They've been dying since World War I. They've been dying since World War II, I should say.
It's a long and slow death.
Yeah, Frederick Wortham tried to stab it as much as he could. And obviously that birthed an entire universe that we all love now. But these days, I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of things that would refute that. Transformers, the biggest book of the year, Daniel Warren Johnson, anything he touches now, rightfully, is gold. He is doing no harm and all good. Now he's leaving the book, but he's still writing it. Thundercats just came on hard and strong. Granted, it had 475 covers. The Ultimate Universe getting, a new breath of life into it has, I'm assuming, put a lot of stores in a great position because we're on to like third prints of certain books, and there was the Black Panther debacle, but that's something different.
Didn't hurt though.
Right.
Well, didn't
right.
hurt some stores.
Didn't hurt unless you were a reader who really wanted to read it.
Yeah.
Sure. But in the long term, it's going to, if these are strong series, and I haven't read Black Panther yet, but I did read the first Ultimate Spider-Man and Peach's Ultimate X-Men, and I love the weird direction that it's going. But is that like safe to say that like comics really aren't dying? Like, sure, there's less readers, but have you seen a jump in people coming in for these specific books, which hopefully means they'll buy other things as well?
What do you got, Eitan?
Yeah, I mean, comics are not dying. That is a thing that people say to get views, likes, clicks, whatever it is. Like, comics aren't dying. They're not at risk of dying. There's like problems with comics and like any other business or form of entertainment. We've got issues. Those, there's been tons of buzz and heat on those books that you mentioned. I love it because I think a lot of it is because of the quality of the books, like Transformers in particular. Like I don't know if there's any collectability to Transformers. Like I don't think issue 1 is selling for a bunch of money or anything.
Medium,
I mean, nothing crazy. But we're selling a shitload of Transformers, like an obscene amount of Transformers every issue. Like ordering more of issue 6 than I did of issue 5. Like it keeps growing. Ultimate Spider-Man had like that speculator heat on it, obviously, but it's so fucking good. Like it's so good, so, and I know it's good because my subscribers for issue 2 were huge. And like, there is an element of that as people who are collecting it and want, the $15 issue 2 or whatever, but there are way more people who are just like, wow, I've been waiting for a Spider-Man book that I really look forward to every month, and this is it. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. A lot of books that people are super into, and comics just are not dying. They are not.
Yeah, they're changing. Like everything changes, and if you're resistant to change, then that's going to feel like a death.
Sure.
Right. And I think that it's hard to look at 3 or 4 comics or lines that have come out this year and use that to say the whole industry's going to be saved by them, right? So I don't think we need saving, but I think that we're at a high point creatively with those books. And what I really hope is that publishers pay attention and are able to divine the reason that those books did well, right? It's not necessarily first appearances, and it's not Hasbro properties or Saturday morning cartoons necessarily that are the reason that those things are successful. It's interesting stories and art and great creators. The conversations between J. Jonah Jameson and Ben Parker in Ultimate Spider-Man is like some of the best comic writing I've ever read. And not just because it makes me think of when Jeff and I are 15 years older than we are now, but like it's a good comic. And I think that we've gone through a period of having pretty good comics, and right now we have some really good comics, and that's we're seeing the benefits of that. So
like pre-pandemic, you had the Hickman X-Men stuff, which was very similar to kind of like where we're at with the Ultimate Universe right now. I take I think if you look downwards at things, there's always reasons to be concerned about anything. I take a pretty Field of Dreams status with comic books and music, which is like vulnerable artistic expression of oneself, and a community around that is something that will always exist and always have a call for it. So if you handle your store culture correctly, you will always have people coming in. We're very fortunate that like we inherited the store at a time where there was a solid subscriber base. I have a tremendous amount of respect for anybody opening a store now, because again, that subscriber base is what allows you to have the flexibility and freedom to explore other things. But I don't worry about comics dying. There's certainly going to be times where we're not making as much money as we are other times, but the quality is
February's,
always
for
going to be there.
example.
February's, for example. But, you know, like,
February is hard for everybody.
it was maybe even Mark Miller who mentioned like kind of like the 10-year cycle of the comics industry.
Sure.
And I think there is a lot of truth to that.
On the flip side of that, Mark Wade, his counterpoint was let it burn down and arise from the ashes. And I had Jim Mafood on a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about how the bust of the end of the 90s gave us the best comics writing in decades in the beginning of the 2000s across the board, because everybody was, you know, Marvel and DC were challenging each other who could put out the weirdest shit with the weirdest indie creators that worked, and who could bring on the new superstars. And then Image was like, hold my beer. And they gave Kirkman the reins, and they gave Brian K. Vaughan, and all of these great series came from like the first 5 to 10 years of the 2000s. So, you know, like there is a cycle. And I think where this maybe pushback that we've seen a little bit across the board for different reasons over the last like 5 years with, you know, certain things, you know, slumping, I think that's going to birth a new era of great series. And I'm here for it, because at the end of the day, like if you're reading a book and you're connecting to it for whatever reason, you're going to keep going and you're going to tell people about it. And those people are going to tell people. I mean, I speak the gospel of DWJ, and I've only really dove into his stuff in the last 6 months, but I've read everything. And it's like, okay, you like weird rock opera, read Murder Falcon. If you like wrestling and action, read Do or Powerbomb. If you know, so there's so much to
DWJ
recommend.
is a prophet. DWJ
My
is
sales
a
pitch
prophet.
for him is how many times that book made me cry.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Works every time.
Emotion tied to it. You know, speaking with you know, like a lot of the different aspects of modern comics, do you think if there, and I'll get your opinions on it too, but if the retailers at large push back on the big two with variant covers, do you think the big two might actually shift their focus into maybe doing less and giving the less is more kind of approach to it for comic stores? Because, you know, I look at New Comic Book Day and I'm like, oh, there's a cool cover. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what if their other issue is back there, issue 2. But no, it's just 40 different versions of issue 3, and there's no copies of issue 2 left. You know, so thoughts on variant covers, but also, do you think a pushback, and you know, if everybody at Comics Pro was like, we're just gonna not fuck with the incentives anymore, do you think it would change?
I don't think it will happen. I think there's too many different ways to do this, and there's not one is not right or wrong. You know, we're variant cover friendly, and we sell incentive variants, and we order multiple covers to different books, and don't order every cover, and kind of, you know, try and be selective or smart about it. But there's people who are just deep in the variant game. And then you've got guys like I have Brian Hibbs in my backyard who doesn't order variant covers, and he's like really very adamant about that, and it works for him. But I don't think there's a unified voice on this one, because I think there's too many ways to do it and do it well. I do think we saw with like Rebirth, I think Dan DiDio's thing was like 2 covers for every book. And I don't think the sales numbers were there, you know, and kind of like what Django was saying about facsimiles, like they wouldn't do it if they didn't sell.
Sure.
They have information we don't have.
Yeah.
That's the thing about variants, to your point, is I don't foresee it changing a ton myself either, because it does work for some stores, and like we're variant friendly. We order them as well. I like that term, Eitan. They sell less and less for us. I don't like modify my ordering to reach for variants or anything. But, you know, to your point, Dave, what we saw even this last week on FOC, the Jeff Johns imprint at Image Comics Ghost Machine. There's 3 number 1s that were available for order on this FOC that come out in a month, and they made the cover A returnable, totally returnable, unless you ordered any ratio variants. at which point it was not returnable. And that's because a lot of stores were abusing returnability in order to, I'm going to order 5,000 copies of this because I get to return them, but I get the 1 in 5,000 variant or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a bummer because like our store doesn't do that. We love returnability because it allows us to find our ceiling for readers, which is the most important thing about sustaining our business. But I thought that was a great compromise because I got to choose, do I want variants or do I want returnability, which was an easy discussion for us. It was returnability, and it meant that I almost doubled my order on each of those 3 issues. To thank them for it, I also sent them an email just saying, like, I appreciate what you guys are doing. But, I think we probably won't see a cutting it out entirely, but I think we will see people exploring alternatives to it and understanding that not every store cares about variants.
I think part of the difficulty with variants from some retailers' perspective is the slog of placing that order, right? Because now you have to scroll through 25 copies of Vampirella when you really just care about cover A. And a lot of like working on this point of sale system, a lot of our discussions and thought process has turned into, well, is this a problem with the publisher or the distributor, or is this a problem with our system for dealing with it? Right. So if you hate dealing with variants, that's not the variant's fault. You need a better way to skip over them when you don't care about them. Right. So like I think that a lot of the retailers' irritation comes down to just, having to look at 10 times the line items that you would when you don't care about it.
And options are a big deal because every comic store is different. Every single, there is no such, like even the ones that have multiple locations, like I've been to a couple of the Coliseum of Comics in Orlando, completely different stores because they know what sells and what doesn't. So returnability and certain things about FOC ordering really needs to include options for each store because, nobody's ordering the same way. For you
stores
guys,
are so wild how different every single one. Like I can't think of another industry that it has not homogenized to the extent that we have not homogenized. We're all little angry kingdoms all by ourselves, and we have all our own superstitions about exactly why we put the bags and boards face up versus face down for pulling them for our customers. Like it gets so granular and so specific. I'll bet you could come up with like 10 pretty general questions and not have a match across all comic stores.
And that's one of my reasons for putting this together is to get, an idea of what everybody's doing and, what works and what doesn't, because, if any of the publishers watching this, anybody that, is making decisions, here's certain things they might be like, oh, that is a great idea. Maybe we'll do it this way or that way. And one of the things I wanted to ask, because obviously big Todd fan, over the last 5 years with he's releasing, the Spawn universe and doing the signed, incentives, have you guys taken advantage of that at all? And if so, has that been a help? And have you seen the interest in Spawn rise because he's expanded and obviously he's gunning for a movie universe because that's the end game for him?
I think his expansion of that series was really smart. Whatever it was, 350 or 300 a couple years ago, because if you're reading Spawn in 2023 or whatever, you're probably pretty fixed or dedicated to that thing. So if he expands the Spawn universe, it meant that my Spawn numbers now applied to 3 more series, which was great.
And the Spawn numbers went up a bit as well, right?
A little bit, yeah.
But...
We're about where we were, but
okay.
His signed stuff, we haven't received the one for 350 yet. But like Comics Pro, Eitan, were you there? Like when he was a number of years, or maybe it was the Diamond Summit.
It was a Diamond Summit.
Signed a bunch of comics for stores, one per the person and we were able to sell them for a ton of money. And that is amazing. Like he understands that. And he's willing to just be like, all right, I keep my signature a little bit scarce, but I'll just give it out to you guys because you're retailers, you're my business partners. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the way that he approaches trying to help comic stores or being willing to do interviews and stuff. our spawn numbers, whether they get up and down, but they're pretty consistent at their core, plus or minus 1 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah, our spawn numbers definitely jumped with the expansion. We were not like a big spawn store by any means. And now, that they're very respectable numbers. They do kind of vary. It is kind of weird. They will like ride a high for a while, and then all of a sudden you're selling, 75% of what you were for a few months or for a year or something. But it is they're all series that I order extra of to have in the bins, because there's always like 10 times a year you get somebody who like either online or comes in the store buys like 10 spawn issues. It's like whatever 10 you have available.
That's a great point. Great point, Eitan. There are not many comic series where I order what we refer to as a shelf number. So like we can always make sure that we have that much after our subs. That has a larger shelf count quantity than most series, because there is an indelible tail to Spawn. Like 5 years from now, somebody is going to be looking for a copy of just this random issue of Spawn because they're filling in a collection. That it defies most series.
And that it's kind of one of those things that you hear people talk about these days, and it's rightful. I've had this conversation umpteen times. The lost art of a full run without a reboot, it doesn't exist anymore. Just like a 50 issue run from an artist and a writer, save for what Kirkman put down in the past and what Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. But with Todd, with Spawn, it is unchanged. And I think, do you think that people talk about, new comic books aren't selling because there aren't runs, but because he's done this long run, it also is one of the things that adds to people back bin diving, because people want to complete a run. I wish it was the same thing for Savage Dragon, but it's pretty much print to order now.
But it also, Savage Dragon people come in and they want those back issues. Like it's not growing, but I think that's because Eric Larson is just doing whatever the heck he wants. He doesn't care if you read it or not. He knows he's got a number of people that are going to keep going, and he can put anything in those books that tickles his fancy. I think there's room for both. It's really nice to have a long running series or two. And, it's undeniable that number ones sell better than number 20s in most cases. I do miss long running series though.
Sure.
It's an interesting question. And I think where you do see an effect is, if you look at the number of volumes of Miles Morales, there's been quite a few. So if you get somebody who's checking in, on a Miles run now, if it's issue 4, I think there is a subtle idea that you're okay just getting the number 1 of the series that you're in. If you had a consistent numbering there, it would feel more like you are a part of something. Like I'm issue 75. Okay, well, I want to read 25 through 40. But when you separate those volumes, and this isn't exclusive or across the board, but like it can change the paradigm of maybe what is a necessity for the continuity that you're reading, how tied it in. Like it really gives a sense of more separation, which I think is great for some readers. But I do think it possibly decreases the number of people feeling like they need to read things to understand all of it.
Right. And every fresh start is a jumping off point as well.
Yep. Great point.
When you get your new Miles Morales number 1, it's really easy to be like, I'm good. I just read 25. That's cool. I don't know who this new writer is. Like, I'll wait and see if it's good.
Yep.
But when you're, on issue 353, like, well, shit, I am 353 issues into this, and like there's some amount of momentum that's going to take me to 354.
Yeah. Once again, with every shop being different, every reader and every collector and every person that walks in is going to be different. I have a lot of friends that watch this channel, a lot of people watch this channel that have kids. And, as I said before, it's not a controversial statement. Comics aren't made for kids anymore. They aren't. They haven't been since the 90s, because that entire Image thing was aimed at 12, 13, and 14-year-olds and 10-year-olds. But is there anything that you both do, with your stores to try and not just be kid friendly, but to get kids to come in and engage them and get them to be new comics readers, because it's one of the ways that the medium gets pushed forward throughout, history and into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think I push back against that a little bit because
Mhm.
maybe single issue comic books aren't really written for kids, but like
Okay.
the graphic novels written for kids are the
Mhm.
highest selling
Right.
graphic novels like of all time. Like Dog
Yeah.
Man has sold just what, like nearly 5 million copies or something.
Yeah.
And Raina Telgemeier is the queen, and we all, uh,
Even the DC graphic ink Zoom stuff, like the Raven,
Yeah.
the Miriko Tamaki stuff sells very well for us.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's one of the growing parts of the industry. It's one of the most diverse and welcoming and inclusive
Mhm.
uh, pieces. So yeah, so Batman is not written for an 8-year-old, but an 8-year-old
Yeah.
got just as many options as we
Sure.
do.
Including Batman adjacent series in graphic novel and in periodical format, right? Like
Right.
Batman Scooby Doo, 100% cool for kids and grown-ups.
Right.
That's good to know. I mean, I don't have kids, so I appreciate that, information coming through. And, people, I know manga is a huge seller for teens, which is great
Mhm.
because not only is it a great format and it is, manga is fantastic, but it's an exposure to a culture that most American kids are not going to be familiar with. And that also helps create new readers. But do you both see, I mean, I don't know, is Dogman manga? No, right?
No, it's
No.
like
I don't-
Captain Underpants style. Yeah, young
Okay.
kids comic.
You know,
But
Captain Underpants.
but
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
well, yeah. But it's it is an interesting point because I absolutely agree. Like the bulk of periodical comics are made for a slightly older demographic, and I do think comics are still making an effort to cater to younger readers. But if you look at something like the 80s,
Yeah.
superheroes have permeated popular culture in a way that you don't necessarily need to make sure a kid knows about Batman, because if they're gonna
Mhm.
if like that idea is in there, so when they're of the age where they would want to be getting into it, you don't have to work as hard to put that in front of them. So creating a space where you have any type of kid comics is important, because I do think what culture has done with putting these IPs into people's brains, like they will come across it. So it's just in my mind the act of creating a space where people feel comfortable and they've felt like their interests can be explored in that space. They will then find those other things.
One of the big things that we do to bring younger people in, we have a burger restaurant right around the corner. And every year leading up to and through Free Comic Book Day, we do Superhero Month there, where we just donate, I don't know, 10 long boxes of comics that we don't really
Wow.
need, with not a super heavy kids focus, because we don't have 10 long boxes of specifically kids comics that we don't need, but like Comics Code Authority appropriate comics.
Mhm.
And it helps the restaurant because then the kids ask to go back twice a week instead of once a week. And it helps us because we're right around the corner and they can finish eating and then walk over and bring the kids over for the rest of the adventure. So that brings in a lot of families and a lot of younger people. And I wish we had something we could do like that during every single quarter of the year. Like
Sure.
that's our one big kid outreach thing every year.
Spark
Just-
Museum.
Just make sure those kids wash their hands before they touch the books.
Yeah.
They can go to the kids section and do whatever they want to those.
Yeah,
books.
we got
Any
a whole area
speculators
that-
rooting through the kids sections. In
We
big
call that
trouble.
the ketchup corner. Yeah, it's just yeah.
So and I'm so thankful for you guys to being able to do this. And once again, shout out to those who can make it, but this won't be the last time I do this. I do want to ask one last kind of open-ended first thing that comes to your brain question. What's one positive change that you would like to see the comics industry overall make to push the medium forward and to help the stores out? Because without comic stores, we're all just going to go to Barnes and Noble and lose in the long term.
For me, it's to help the stores out. I need the publishers to be marketing their books to my customers. I think all publisher marketing efforts are to us. Store owners, that's where they put their money. That's where they send their emails. It's, what it is. But that, them sending me an email is not going to get me to have my orders. Them advertising to my customers and then my customers asking me for copies is going to get me to have my orders.
Your brand new customers that you've never seen before because they got marketed to.
Right. I'm always amazed because, I run our store Instagram, and it follows, I don't know, 1,500 comic book accounts, just comic like artists and publishers and all these things. And I never, ever see comics being advertised to that account. And I can't believe it. Like if this account's not being advertised, what account is? It blows my mind. So I would just love to see our publishing partners look beyond us to the people who are actually influencing our orders.
Sure.
That's a great answer.
I don't get any marketed stuff to me about comics.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's weird, especially considering how much of my internet time is devoted to it. I think there's, the answer that came to my mind that's kind of an easy answer for me as somebody who orders a lot of the comics is returnability is a really important component of ordering comics. It goes back to even kind of our discussion around The Last Mermaid. Being able to take a chance on ordering series that don't have a defined reader base is really important to me. And even if there is a defined reader base, there's a lot of comics that come out. And if I want to order a lot of something, I have to have faith in it, and I might fail in doing that. So for several years, Image and Boom were doing a really admirable job of returnability for things. That's died down a little bit. After that, DC was doing a lot of it. It's also died down a little bit. So right now we're in sort of a slightly slumped area of returnability. But for me, being able to make the first issue or two returnable is an incredibly important aspect of being able to risk my finances and ultimately find those very exciting things that are going to hook my new readers.
My answer is going to be the most dry, boring, dumb thing. Jeff knows what it is. Eitan probably knows what it is too.
Is it data? Is it data?
It's data. I've been working on a standard for comic book data being fed into stores and to distributors from publishers with Katie Pride and Comics Pro and Brian Garside and Jessica Wells from Penguin Random House. And that's basically kind of our attempt to make it so that the incoming stream of information to our stores and our point of sale systems is consistent and lets us expand the way that we can view our sales and our reports, and also maybe even change the way that we can subscribe people to things. So subscribing people to sets of rules rather than a specific series. So I want every single Todd McFarlane book or Todd McFarlane cover that's priced under $30 and in the Spawn universe would be something that we could do if we could trust the incoming data from people. And the amount of time that retailers have ended up spending dealing with that, whether they know it or not, when distribution fractured, a lot of our issues came down to data management. And so we at Comics Pro this year, we launched the Comet data standard, and with any luck, that'll be adopted in the next year or two. I think most of the stakeholders have given the thumbs up that they're working on it. And it was developed with 30 other groups. So Marvel was there, DC was there, Skybound was there, Lunar Penguin, Marvel, or Diamond. And it was a really collaborative thing. I don't think anybody walked away from a discussion thinking, man, it didn't go my way. Everybody walked away with, okay, that works for me. So as boring and dry and hard to really encapsulate in a soundbite as that is, better data would make comic stores run smoother and give us the chance to hand sell rather than swearing at the computer about series codes and barcodes.
And, if I'm not a data guy, but people do respond to that and they love that because data it changes things. It makes
it changed the book industry.
Yeah.
Right. And we are the book industry, just 10 times more complex because we have variant covers and series codes that matter.
Dave, same question you posed to us, posed at you.
Oh, I think from my standpoint, I just think tightening up the ships on both Marvel and DC, and just less is more. I don't need to try and figure out what series I should read on 3 characters because there's 20 issues coming out in those 3 things.
Yeah.
And across comic stores, I would love to just see comic stores doing more of the kind of outreach that y'all are doing. Engaging readers. Stop shitting on things.
Right.
Shitting on
Please.
things does not help art. It doesn't.
No.
And
Let the
let's
art
bring
shit on
more
things.
positive. Yeah, exactly. And let people tell the stories that they want to tell. If you don't like it, don't read it. That's okay. Nobody ever said, I dislike your opinion because you walked away from it, or I dislike you because you just decided not to read it. But when you actively use your megaphone to shit on somebody's art, it does nothing. It does absolutely nothing, but lets people spew more hatred. And comics are not something that people should be spewing hatred about. We should be, this is such a great story. I connected with this because it let me escape from the horrors that are going on outside of my door.
Yep.
So I'm here this channel exists to give people a voice to, talk about their art, talk about their business, or me just to be a wild, crazy person and, loony. And that's me.
Dude, I really appreciate the invitation and letting us come in here and talk to you and Eitan about this. Awesome, super fun. And I just also want to shout out, I do think that your channel and your podcast is fantastic. And I really appreciate the way that you have an open-minded conversation about comics, but art, personal life, the way that all of that comes together. I think this is a really cool thing. I really dig your approach to it, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I just, want to be a space like you guys create a physical space for people to come in, talk about comics, buy comics, be around other nerds. And I have that as a virtual space just because, I'm reaching a different audience. But before we get going, let's get a little plug on where they can find you on the internet and then also physically, because, one leads to the other or vice versa.
Sure. We're in Oakland, 1601 Clay Street, right downtown. BART stations all around us. Don't try and park there. If you do, don't leave anything in your car. At all. And online, primarily Instagram, at Cape Cowl Comics, and then also at Cape Cowl Sales. And at that account, we do daily auctions, about 80 to 100 books a day, all starting at $1. You got about 20 or 24 hours to put your bid in on the comments, and crazy deals.
They are.
They make me cringe hard at some of those deals. And we also do our claim sales every Tuesday night at 5:00.
Cool.
I'm Jeff, the Comics Place in Bellingham, Washington. It's maybe the most furthest north comic shop in the Continental.
I think it is.
Which makes it a little bit
argued too hard yet.
Which makes it difficult to get creators in. But we're real proud of the store, and we'd love to get people in there to check it out. Django and I do a weekly podcast reviewing the week's books called The Comics Place Presents Perfectly Acceptable Podcast. You can listen to us there. We're like 350 episodes into that. Django and I have been recording a podcast called the Data Bros, the Bureau of Records, Objects, and Standards. With Brian Garside, who Manage Comics. And that has been a ton of fun doing retail sort of industry podcast that comes out weekly. You can find that at the Data Bros. And I also do a music podcast called Why Not Like It. You can look for that. We've got about 40 episodes we're about to release. I'm Jeff.
And I'll be building Legos in the living room when I'm not sorting back issues.
Well, and for everybody watching, links will be down below for all of the things that you just heard. And, comment down below. I'm sure we'll get some pushback, but that's okay. That's just an open discussion. And gents, this was fantastic. And I can't thank you enough. And I can't wait to do this again, because the more shops have this kind of open conversation, the more that people are just going to open their mind up and maybe listen, and maybe we'll get some changes in the positive way. But all right. Well, thanks everybody. All right, everybody. That was so much fun, and I want to thank once again everybody for their time. This will not be the last time I do this, so stay tuned because I've got great ideas for this and some other stores that I want to get involved. So consider this just a beginning. And if you are not subscribed to this, please do. All of the links for the stores are down below, so you can check out their actual websites or follow them on social media. And you know what? If you're in the area where these stores exist, just walk in, say hi, support your local comic stores, whether it's these or any others, because without them, you won't have a place to go to buy your comics, and you'll just be forced to buy them from me. You don't want that, do you? See you next week of West Coast Avengers, the comic guy. I got a fun, cool stream today. Great thing that's happening. It's big. It's big. It's so large. All right.